We are Worcester Polytechnic Institute students. My name is Cameron.
I'm Ryan. I'm Stella.
Our project was an exhibit to celebrate the achievements of the Venice Project Center. So the Venice Project Center, Fabio already stated a lot of this, but to reaffirm, it was established in 1988. More than 1,000 students have worked on the over 250 projects, and it is a long-term research program, which means that information from past projects can be pulled from future students for their information. So like I said, over 250 projects have been worked on here, which comes out to 485,000 hours of work. This is the first team that ever came to Venice. They're referred to as the bootstrap team because they determined the feasibility of a project center in Venice. They determined that, yes, we could in fact establish a project center at this location. So since then, projects have explored Venice from the top all the way to the bottom of the canals, in the sky, in the bell towers, and below the water. And all these projects are always using the latest technology available. So our task was to establish an exhibit. In order to do this, we need to know what kind of work has been done by the VPC. And so these are the primary 6 research topics that have been pursued throughout the students' time here. They consist of art and architecture, infrastructure and mobility, economy and society, nature and energy, history and geography, and science and technology. So we're going to start with art and architecture. So these are the main subtopics that make up art and architecture. Beginning with public art. So these are the different kinds of artifacts that have been cataloged throughout since the founding of the Venice Project Center. They have been cataloged in order to highlight the damages mainly that have occurred to them in order for restoration groups to actually prioritize different kinds of artifacts in order to restore them. So a way this was done was through Preserve Venice, which is a nonprofit that basically aids these artifacts and prioritizes restoration. So in total, this is 6,595 different kinds of artifacts that have been restored, have been cataloged by project groups. So for bell towers and bells, we have documented several of the bell towers in Venice. The map here includes is part of this documentation where it includes all of the bell towers that have been worked on so far. We have also restored and repurposed bell towers, and this has been done in several ways. For example, one of these was actually they installed antennas on the top of bell towers, or they made plans to do so. They've also considered converting them into greenhouses, and they've also made them as a means for fire prevention by spraying water out the top of them. And this is all done so that the city prioritizes these restoration efforts for the future. So more in detail, when you select a bell tower on the map, it brings you to a screen such as this, where it shows off a panoramic view, an audio of what the bell would sound like, ID numbers, names, locations, a lot of useful information. So we have also documented the missing artifacts, and that can consist of paintings, statues, and even buildings in some cases. So, and finally, we've documented churches and convents for the purpose of reusing them and repurposing them. And in fact, we are actually in one of these repurposed churches right now. So.
And the next major primary research area is infrastructure and mobility. There's 6 subtopics that make up infrastructure and mobility. And VPC was actually the first people to document the canals and canal segments, and they created an information infrastructure that is still used by the city until this day. The VPC has also documented all of the bridges in Venice, including the bridge heights, steps, surface area, and the pipes on the bridges. And this helps them determine how long it would take to maintain each of the bridges, and maintenance schedules were formed by the City of Venice using our documentations. The VPC also proposed a vacuum sewer system that the city almost adopted, and this project was so great that it won an IKP award from WPI. And the VPC has also mapped sewer damage at night during low tide because they were unable to view the canal walls and during the day. And here's some of the sewer outlets and sectional walls that the VPC documented. The VPC also documented all of the docks in Venice, and they created an application called EasyDock, and it's basically an application that is used by the cities to make the docks more safe and useful. And all of the infrastructure was documented by all of the information was documented by the VPC and used by a company called Insula, and it was put into a book made by Insula called Venice, the City of Canals, and the info is used for maintenance by the City of Venice. The VPC also collected boat traffic data using certain points throughout the city, and they determined what boats make up the type of traffic, and the VPC taught this method to the City of Venice so they can collect their own boat traffic data. The VPC has also developed multiple proposals to reduce moto indoso in the City of Venice, and moto indoso is the damage to the shore created by waves from boats. And one of the proposals actually also won an award from WPI, and it was to reduce boat traffic by delivering by destination instead of product. The next major research area is economy and society. It's made up of two different subtopics. The VPC has documented all of the shops in Venice, and you can filter these shops by the year they're collected, the location, and the shop type. And the VPC also made an application to generate the continuous total amount of tourists in Venice, and you can filter these by day trippers or overnighers, and you can also see how these tourists arrived. The next primary research area is nature and energy. There's three subtopics in nature and energy. The VPC has created an application to measure the noise throughout Venice. And the VPC also has done thousands of measurements, but done by hand, to measure the hydrodynamics. And they created an interactive application, show the direction of water in Venice and how fast the water moves in Venice. And we're not going to go too deep in the green spaces today because there's another group today about green spaces.
The next major research topic, this is on, right? Okay. The next major research topic done by the Venice Project Center is history and geography. One good example of this is the Venice Project Center created a digital framework for high quality and interactive maps using the Jacopo de Barbari View of Venice woodcut map as a basis for this. They also created an interactive timeline of the history of Venice dating back more than 1,000 years using the book Historical Atlas of Venice by Giovanni Di Stefano. The final major research topic done by the Venice Project Center is science and technology. They collaborated with National Geographic on their genographic project, taking DNA samples of native Venetians to determine the genetic ancestry of residents to this region, and determine the first settlers in the region. And finally, we've also created a STEM lab for young Venetian students to generate interest in the science and technology fields. The Venice Project Center, in addition to all of these projects, we've gained a lot of recognition from international publications and have also received the President's Award from our host, Worcester Polytechnic, 5 separate times. In addition to being recognized by the university and by these publications, the Venice Project Center also aims to disseminate their information on their own. In the past, we have run a number of exhibit projects, usually on important anniversaries of the Venice Project Center's founding since 1988. For example, the 35th anniversary, 30th anniversary, going on and so forth from that. These projects have taken place in various spaces around the Project Center, around the building specifically, and online. For example, there was one in the bell tower, setting up a timeline going up the stairs for that, and finally it was determined that the most optimal space for an exhibit to be held in this building was the main stairwell.
All right, so in order to show you guys the layout of the stairwell and of our exhibit, we made a booklet for you guys. So it includes our diagrams, measurements, our plans for the posters, and a lot of other useful information. So this is one of the diagrams that are included. It's a diagram of the layout of the first stairwell, and this is also a diagram of the actual entire wall that the posters will be hung from.
Once we determined the layout of the exhibit, we decided that we wanted these introductory roll-ups at the base of the stairs. You can actually see examples of these right at the back of the room. This will allow us to introduce not only the Venice Project Center, but our exhibit for those who may not have gotten all of the background that you all just did. These will serve as a introduction to our exhibit. The other important thing that isn't our regular staircase layout is the elevator design. We wanted to make it a goal to make sure our exhibit was accessible to those with mobility disabilities. And due to the nature of our exhibit, we acknowledge that it is not possible for our staircases to be accessible to a wheelchair. So we decided to add a display into the elevator. This will consist of two little roll-up or two smaller posters, probably similar to the introductory roll-ups, as well as an overview poster that will have links to the websites for all of the different topics. Speaking of those topics, it was a major task to narrow down over 20 topics that you saw at the beginning to 13 that we have decided to display, and it was a combination of efforts from the B23 Legacies group, our predecessor, and us determining which topics deserve to go into this exhibit. Once we determined the topics, we begun to lay out our posters. These are our first drafts of our informational posters. They were originally presented in a landscape orientation and primarily focused on the research and the actual information on the topics as opposed to what the VPC had done on those topics. However, we were able to use these posters to start determining hanging methods and the size that we wanted for our posters. This is our first ever draft of a poster. It was 150 by 90 centimeters, which is more than double what it needed to be. It was massive. But we were able to use this to determine that PVC plastic was the correct material for us. We then moved on to our second draft, where we tested and experimented with hanging methods and eventually determined a pole with wires attached would be the ideal hanging method. You can see our finalized version of that here in a digital format. We have decided on a metal rod with transparent nylon wire. The nylon wire is nice in this particular form because it has crimping abilities so that you don't have to have knots that don't necessarily look professional. The most important thing, though, is the content of the actual exhibit. Each of our posters is going to have a general overview of the topic. This allows people to have a background on something like moto andoso, which people might not be familiar with if they aren't from Venice. Then they'll have what the VPC did on this topic. This includes subcategories, technology used, numbers and data such as the amount of projects worked on, the first year of a project. Then we will have the impact. This is things such as awards or changes actually implemented by the City of Venice. And lastly, we will have posters and graphics. This allows us to visualize some of this data as well as make the poster more visually appealing, and also allows us to have a QR code which links to our website.
As Quinn was saying about our website, the website is going to have a page for each of our topics, and each page is going to be split into 4 general sections. And I'm going to give you a quick demo of the canals page. On the right-hand side, you can see it's a general overview. The general overview is here to fill up any missing holes in the poster because we were limited by physical space, and on websites, virtual space is basically unlimited. And on the left-hand side, you can see notable VPC projects. These are all projects related to canals. And as you scroll down the page, you can see a timeline of each of the projects along with a short description. And the story map that the V23B Legacy team created is also linked on this website. And every page is going to have additional content that's specific to each topic. And this map of the canals is ripped from veniceprojectcenter.org, along with a lot of the other additional content on the other pages.
The final portion of our project that we created is a digital render of the exhibit in its final form. This is the view from the bottom of the staircase looking up. You can see the two roll-ups standing next to each other. Moving up the stairs, you can see all of the posters hanging from their metal rods. And this is an idealized view of the entire staircase from the back. There's actually a wall there, so you wouldn't be able to see this exact view. But this is the general layout of how we would recommend this exhibit to be laid out in the future. Thank you for your time.